WORTV.
For Yankee baseball, it's WABC Talk Radio 77.
Catch Yankee Fever with me, Art Russ Jr. on Sports Talk right here on WABC Talk Radio 77. For every hit and pitch, nobody knows more about Yankee baseball than I do.
Hey, Art, that's just one exception.
Let's make that two exceptions.
All right, you guys. You got me.
WABC Talk Radio 77. Yankee baseball.
If you want excitement, put your hands up in the air. 'Cause when you're not in baseball, Dodger Stadium has the flair. So pack up all the family and steal away from home. Gobble down a Dodger, share an ice cream cone. That Dodger blue looks good on you. Bring your friends and share fun. Get a souvenir or two. You'll be glad you came. It's never the same. So come on out and we'll see you at the game. Reach out, oh, Ray and Steve. Reach out, with Ray and Steve. Take me out to the ball game. Take me out to the car. For the home team, if they don't win, it's a shame. Play ball.
Hi, everybody, and a very pleasant good evening to you wherever you may be. And, of course, I'm quoting the great Vin Scully. But I want to welcome each one of you to Reach Out with Ray and Steve. Of course, we are the show where East meets West, where the Yankees meet the Dodgers. Baseball meets music, and we all come together for community. And we have a fantastic, amazing show. We have greats from the world of music and greats from the world of baseball today on this show. So let's bring in our hosts and not waste any more time for Ray and Steve. Come on in, gentlemen.
What's happening?
Hey, Robbie, how are you today?
What's happening?
I've been rocking and rolling. I got off in and flew and came straight home to my studio here. I've been on the road. We played Reno on Friday. Saturday night we were in Salt Lake City. Last night we were in Boise, and I got up at 5 a.m. just so I could be on your show tonight.
Unbelievable.
Wow.
Well, we pay you the most. Mr. Valley doesn't get paid.
Why are you complaining? You get so much money from us, Robbie.
That's true. But that limo didn't show up for me. What happened,
Robbie, we have to blame Carmine
you read that
on that.
contract? It's Carmine's fault. That's
our producer.
Yeah,
it's in a bad slump.
Yeah, but you were also in Radio City, too, in New York City last week.
Hey, how do you like that? We went from Radio City to Boise.
Hey.
You never know in this crazy business. But last Saturday night, Radio City Music Hall, Frankie Valli. Hey, how many? Oh, somebody caught me looking out at the audience there.
There we go.
I saw some great pictures from Radio City, some really nice ones. You and Frankie.
Hey, what do you think? How many 88-year-olds have headlined at Radio City Music Hall? It's just amazing. This guy's got the fountain of youth.
It's unbelievable. But, I mean, Robbie, I understand that you work for this man for 89 years. But, I mean, listen, you've been working for us for the last 3 or 4 years, and we're pretty cool with you, too, okay?
Yeah, you know what? I enjoy working with Frankie Valli, but working with with the Bat Boy and
Okay,
with
all right.
Steve. You know, that is like
Well,
the
I mean,
best.
let's not get carried away now,
That's
Robbie.
right. I know the Bat Boy's enough already.
Yeah,
There.
you know, come
but
on.
Robbie, when you're at Radio City, when you look into that audience, when you come out, you know, even all the time you've been performing, that still give you a high.
Yeah, there are certain venues that do give you a high, but tell you the truth, when I walk on stage, and we're going to be talking to Mark Stein later, who is one of my superheroes of life. I mean, this guy is one of the all-time greats, so we'll have to talk to him about this. But I've been on stages since I'm a young teenager, and when I walk on stage, it feels like I'm home. It really does. It just feels so natural.
Oh my
Wow.
God.
Well, well, you know what? We had a surprise guest. We just start off with it because he just popped on. Ray, it's somebody special's birthday today, right? Billy Martin. And your
Wow.
long history with the Yankees and Billy Martin. We could not start this show off with asking Billy Martin Jr. to pop on and say a few words about his father and this special day. Billy, are you there?
Billy.
Yes, I am. How we doing, fellas?
Good, Billy. I know the last minute here. I know we may have some Wi-Fi problems, but talk about today for you, but also to connect with Ray today.
Ray's a father to me. Had to share my father and be a little times. No, it's people that really knew my father knew that his heart was bigger than his grit, and those people that got to know him, they're like us. They're missing him today.
Ray, when you see Billy come on today, what do you think?
too much.
You know, some things we talk about very carefully when we go over the show, and some things we spring on each other. And today was something Ray didn't know was going to happen. But I want, Billy, you've been a friend of the show. You've been such a great guy to Ray and friends. I thought if you had a few moments just to share a little bit about your father and just your relationship with Ray.
You know, all that time we spent behind the scenes in the dugout, clubhouse, getting to know the guys for who they really were, not the act they put on in front of the cameras, you know. It's hard to put that into words sometimes, how real some of these people were. And Ray's lack of communication right now answers that.
Yeah. But
Just that Billy always shared his dad with me. You know, I didn't have a real dad that was there. And the incredible Billy Martin Sr., you know, he's handling the Bronx Bombers. He's handling a situation with Reggie Jackson and Thurman Munson and all this kind of stuff. And yet he's taking time to be a father to me, to make me feel that I counted and that I mattered. And he always told me that. And the fact that Billy Jr., who in essence had to, he needed time with his dad because his father was away all the time. And so he would come to New York, and you know what? He still shared his dad with me. He still makes, you know, he's a little boy, and he's going after, to help this teenage kid out. Hey, come on with us, be with us. You know, I mean, that was Billy Jr. And to this day, I'm still borrowing his dad. I still need his father. I still want to be able to say that was one of the great men of my life and one of the great men, period, because he was a man's man. And I'm so proud of Billy Martin Jr. because if you see his kids, they're so beautiful and they love their grandfather, even though they never met the grandfather. They love their grandfather, and I'm really touched by that.
Well, Billy, I appreciate you coming on, and I know for your family, I mean, I'm sure the memories and the visions of your father are very heightened day in, day out, but especially for today.
Well, it's a big day. I mean, I don't know. A day doesn't go by that I don't think about my father. And so it's his birthday. He'd be 94 today.
Wow.
There's no telling. What I wouldn't give for just having one more lunch with him, for letting him hang around with my kids for one weekend. But on a lighter note, I'm going to let you guys guess what Billy Martin III is contemplating doing. What job in professional baseball he's thinking about stepping into.
Oh, wow. Well,
Yeah,
the
right.
natural
Come
thing,
on,
of
Robbie,
course,
you
would
got
be,
something
the
up?
natural thing would be to be manager. But I mean, you tell me. I don't know how old he is,
Don't know.
Billy III.
22, 23 now.
Well, let's say what would be the biggest dichotomy or to his grandfather legacy.
We lost you for a second there, Billy. Hey, I want to throw this at you while we're all
okay,
contemplating the
what I
answer.
said was,
Go ahead.
what do you think would be the exact opposite job of my father's legacy in Major League
God.
Baseball?
Oh, Lord.
Oh, opposite umpire.
That's right.
Yeah,
Umpire?
that would
That's
be
correct.
it. Wow.
Ah.
Billy III is going to apply to some different camps and try to go to umpire school. He umpired 12 games in the last 2 days and had never done one in his life.
Wow.
That
Wow.
is super cool. Absolutely super cool.
Well, tell him he might get his pants dirty every now and then, from managers.
I don't
But
know,
Billy-
not anymore.
He's going to be the
How
first
would they-
umpire to kick dirt on the manager.
Exactly.
There we go. I like that. But Billy, you'll have to come back on the show. Thank you for spending a few blessed moments with us and making this guy's day. And I'm glad. I love to see the friendship with you guys because it's heartfelt and it's natural and it's beautiful. Thank you, sir.
And I do want to say one thing. I don't know, Billy's still there, but the world is a better place because Billy Martin was in this world, and he left a legacy that will go on forever, especially in sports. And what a great baseball icon Billy Martin was, and his legacy is amazing.
Always will be.
Always will be, Billy Martin. So before we go further, let's just check out the standings real quick.
Can we just skip that this week?
No, not this week, because the Yankees are 25-9, 735 clip. The Mets are 23-13, 639, and your Dodger boys are picking up the pace. They're 21-12.
Well, we're still in first. We're still in first, but we've had a rough
That's
week.
not a bad record, though.
It's not a bad record, but
Hey, did you see what happened, though? I think it was yesterday. One of the coolest things I have seen ever in baseball. There's a new pitcher now in the club. It's a very elite club. There are only 2 players in the history of baseball now that 2 pitchers, I should say, 2 pitchers that have over 600 home runs. And they both have been Dodgers. Babe Ruth and Albert Pujols.
Oh,
that's
boy.
right. Yeah. Babe Ruth. Really, Robbie? That's a stretch. Wow.
Oh, nice, Robbie.
Wow.
He was. Hold it now. Let's get the record straight. Babe Ruth was on the Dodgers. Is that accurate or not?
Yeah, for a cup of coffee, yes.
Well,
He was on the Dodgers.
He was a coach. He was a coach.
He would, but
okay, he's a coach for the Dodgers.
Wow.
Okay,
Nice.
he was not a player.
I think when he went in the Hall of Fame, when Albert's going to go in the Hall of Fame with his Dodger hat too.
Yeah, okay.
So, Robbie, you confused our young people out there about Babe Ruth now. We're going to have to make the record straight next week.
Hey,
Okay.
but is that cool though? What Albert did?
Yeah.
Oh,
that was
yeah,
nice.
no doubt.
He pitched yesterday.
No
I
doubt.
love Albert Pujols, man.
No doubt.
And do you realize that this Albert is only, I think it's 19 games away from 700 home runs, 19 home runs away.
I know.
Is that?
I'm not sure he's going to get it.
Hey, you know what? He better get it, man. And I mean, he's still got a full season to play, and he's playing every day now.
I don't think he's going to hit 19 home runs. How about that?
I don't know. Well, we're trying to get Mickey Rivers on, but he's tied up at the moment. So let's bring on Steve Malzberg, because he knows a few things about the Yankees, and he's been a legend in New York radio, also on cable TV. His talk shows has inspired so many people from around the country. And Steve Malzberg is a great friend.
He's a great friend of mine, but I also know he's one of your heroes.
Yes, and Steve Malzberg. Yeah. Did you catch the opening commercial that we had, Steve?
I got to tell you, I was going to start with that, whether you asked me about it or not. First of all, thanks for having me. Great to see all you guys. Yeah. That brings back such great memories. I mean, I think that was 1983. That was the third year that that WABC had the Yankees. And that was a great commercial for Art Rust and Sports Talk and Yankee baseball. And I'll always remember that. That was fantastic. I love that. I can watch it again and again.
Yeah. But tell people how you got that gig behind Art Rust Jr., because that's inspiring too.
Well, first off, I want the people to understand that Steve and Art Rust Jr., they were the first to have a talk radio, sports talk radio. So, I mean, true pioneers.
That's right.
Well, I'll tell you what, I was finished my internship at WMCA radio at the time. It was talk radio, and people like Bob Grant and John Sterling were there. But on weekends, Art Rush Jr. did a sports talk show. So I produced his show after my internship. I helped him book his guests, and we had some fun doing that. And then a year later, February or so, or January of 1981, I get a call from Art saying, hey, WABC is getting the Yankees. Now, WABC, music radio, growing up in New York, music, getting the Yankees. Well, they're switching to talk, but first they're getting the Yankees, and they hired Art Rush Jr. to do a sports talk show before the Yankee pregame show every night, Monday through Friday. And he had the program director, a gentleman named Jay Clark, hire me as his producer, and he did. And I wound up spending the next 23 years of my life at WABC.
Wow.
Thanks to Art and Jay Clark and everyone in between. And so that show started in 81. Well, guess what? There was a baseball strike in 81. Right. And that meant that Art basically replaced what they had scheduled for the Yankee games.
Wow.
So Art would be on 6 to 9, the only sports talk in town during a baseball strike, the Yankee station. So the show just took off, went through the roof, and he wound up doing the show till about late 88 or early 89. And fans started, I think, in 86. So we were before WFBN, we were before Dave Sims and WNBC.
But you know, I remember those times, because when the strike was happening, I would listen to you and Art Russ, and sometimes I want to listen to you and not the Yankee games, because you guys really had a pulse of what was going on in the city.
It was fun. I mean, I remember players coming up on the show. I remember Rick Cerrone, catcher of the Yankees at the time, coming up on the show. And, you know, we had everybody. And it was, you know, I look back and I'm saying, man, I was 21, 22 years old when I started. What the heck was I doing, doing that? And then, of course, eventually I met Ray, and he's just been such a wonderful friend. And, if I may digress, I'm not going to go into details about why, but Ray involved someone in my family with Billy Martin Jr. just about a week or so ago. But said, you need to talk to Billy Martin Jr. Called him on the phone, gave my family member the phone, and they had a conversation, a very helpful, pleasant, introductory conversation, which will hopefully result in a friendship as well. So, I mean, I don't have to tell you about what I think of Ray and what Ray has done for a million people, and what he's done for me and for my family. He's just a great guy. And Steve, You came down. You both came down when I was at the stadium. That's where that picture of you and me was from the other day. And and what can I say about Robbie and Frankie Valli? I was such a fan of all three of you guys. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, Robbie, you remember 1981 pretty well, don't you, Robbie?
That was a big year for us. Fernando Mania. And of course, then we played some. I forget who we played in the World Series and beat them. And Fernando was pitching in Yankee Stadium.
Right. That team, the Yankees, right?
That was our revenge year, because that Mickey Rivers and those guys in 77 and 78 just broke our hearts. And Reggie, all those guys broke our hearts. So we had to come back. And in 1981, we did get our revenge, and we beat the Yankees again in the World Series, finally.
So, Steve, you said something really profound, because you were 21, 22 years old. And now a show, we kind of teach the history to young people, of the musicians and of the athletes. But you have to kind of be in it to win it. You have to have that work ethic to be in the right spot at the right time. And sometimes money is not where it's at that time. It's just being at the right place, right?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, I was a kid at Brooklyn College on the radio station, and I said, you know what, let me make a call to WMCA, which I listened to every night. I mean, from the time I was a kid, I would listen to Bob Grant and John Sterling back to back. How's that for a doubleheader every night? From politics of Bob Grant to John Sterling, who was quite a character on his sports talk show back then. Quite a character, maybe not surprising, but he was very entertaining. Let's put it that way. And I called up WMCA and I said, hey, do you have any internships? And they said, oh, hold on. They transferred me to a guy named John Gutman. John Gutman said, oh, we're starting a national internship program the next term, as a matter of fact. And we talked because, I told him about Sterling and Grant and Farber and everybody I listened to. I got the internship, and everything launched from there. Yeah, money. I mean, I couldn't have cared less about money, and at that point, and what I was doing, and people I was meeting, and places I was able to go, and it was a dream. And by the way, about Billy Martin, I mean, Billy Martin, I idolized Billy Martin in a different sense than I idolized Bobby Mercer. But Bobby Mercer, I got to know right up until the end, and became a friend of his. I can't say that about Billy Martin, unfortunately, because he wasn't there long enough and I was too young. But I did get to interview him at an old timers game and down in one spring training, and it was the thrill of my life. I mean, I couldn't believe. I still have that picture. Same day I did Roger Maris at an old timers game. Wow. I have that. I look at those pictures. I can't believe I'm standing there with these people. But yeah, I mean, money goes out the window when you're young and ambitious and you're living a dream. At least it did back then. Now it might not. We're in a different era. People are funny now, and not in a good way for the most part. But back then it was just wow. I'm dreaming. Somebody pinch me.
So Steve, talk about your journey on radio and TV, so people get a better understanding of what you've done.
Sure. Well, at WABC, I did sports exclusively for the first 10 or 12 years, including my own sports talk show on weekends and filling in for Art. And then right up until the night that OJ was riding around in the Bronco, the Knicks were playing the Houston Rockets in an NBA Finals game at the Garden. I was supposed to go cover it, but I believe it was a Friday night. And my program director said, look, the Yankees are on. After the Yankee game, we have a tape of Lynn Samuels from, or vice versa, I think Bob Grant from until 1 a.m. Then at 6 a.m, we have another tape show on Lynn Samuels. Can you stay? Don't go to the game. Give it to someone else. Stay and do these shows live to talk about OJ. So I did it. And then he let me fill in for various political hosts. I always had politics in my sports. I always loved talking, the issues, not just the statistics, and literally politics, like Jesse Jackson protesting a paucity of black managers, et cetera, those kinds of things. And so it was a natural progression. I always loved politics. So I just transitioned over to politics and stayed there till 2004. The last show I hosted really was a show called The Buzz with Richard Bay. We followed Sean Hannity. It's from 6 to 8 p.m. And I did sports talk as well, on and off at ABC until the end. Then I went to WOR until that station, the owner, Mr. Buckley, passed away. They made changes. And then from there, I went to Newsmax Television, which there was none at the time. In 2013, Newsmax launched Newsmax TV. And I was Chris Ruddy. I was the first and only host. My first guest the day after the Super Bowl in 2013, February of 2013, was Donald Trump. First guest, first show.
Wow.
And I had him, and I had him through my days at OR. I met Donald Trump and started having him on with Art Russ when he bought the Generals of the USFL.
Right,
so
right.
He used to come on with us. I got to know him. You know, people say they've known him for years. I've known him for 40 years.
Wow.
And from Newsmax, after 2017, we parted ways, and I wound up at RT America. And RT America was affiliated with, Russia to an extent. And they gave me total freedom. I was one of the few conservatives. I was allowed to say anything I wanted to say. No one ever told me. I hosted a show called Eat the Press, which talked about media bias, had great guests, everybody from Naomi Wolf to Roger Stone and everybody in between. Ray, of course, was a guest at Newsmax, plugging his books. But after what happened with Russia and Ukraine, RT America, I was there 4.5 years. March 3rd, they had a conference call with us, and they said, adios, due to unforeseen circumstances, we're closing down. So they closed down because DirecTV dropped them and Dish dropped them, and people started leaving. So I'm looking for the next opportunity.
Wow.
Hey, did you interview George Steinbrenner?
Oh yeah. I interviewed George during some rough periods. There was a time we had a general manager named Fred Winehouse, who, when he took over in '88, said, I want to fire my announcers. Who should I get? And I said, how about John Sterling? And Fred Winehouse came from Washington. He didn't know Sterling. He wasn't a sports guy. So he said, who? I explained it. He says, get him on the phone. And as John has told people on and off the air, the rest is history. Fred called him, and he's been play-by-play ever since. Started with Jay Johnstone, I believe, his first few years. But Steinbrenner, from Fred Winehouse, when the Yankees were doing poorly early on, like 1990, I hosted the Yankee pre- and post-game show, and that's the year George got suspended for a while. But even before the Yankees were doing poorly, Winehouse printed up bumper stickers apologizing to Yankee fans. So he did not make George happy, as you could imagine, but still George talked to me, and we had a great relationship, and I'll always treasure that. And I have some of those tapes as well. I've been cleaning out my attic, guys. And I think I recorded every show I ever did, because all I find are cassettes. And if they're not labeled with a star and a name, a big name, I chuck them, because what am I going to do with them? So I have several very interesting shows and interviews and Yankee pre- and post-game shows and pictures. I'm finding Mickey Mantle autographed pictures and just great stuff. And a memorabilia collection that is unbelievable, really personalized, but unbelievable for me anyway.
Well, Steve got me in trouble with the Yankees one year. I don't know if he remembers this, whereas I went in to see Donald Trump about advising him on Latin scenarios. How do you talk, to the Latin people, et cetera, what have you, which he didn't listen to me at all. He went back, he just did what being Donald Trump.
Gee, I'm shocked.
Right? And Steve had that on TV, and all the Yankee people are seeing this. And, oh my God! You remember that, Steve?
Yeah, well, that was it. I think you told that story at Newsmax, right?
Yeah. Yes, at Newsmax, exactly.
Yeah, so people saw it. Yeah, so you got you in trouble. I didn't.
Yeah. See, he's always blaming somebody else. But you mentioned cassette tapes. If you want to rewind it, just stick a pencil in the middle, and then it rewinds that way.
Oh, but I got cassette machines. I got
okay. Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but thank you. Yeah, no. I'm listening to some of them. I'm playing these. Mike Bossy. I was a big Islander fan growing up. I always hated the Rangers. I'm sorry, folks, but I was a big Islander fan. And to lose Mike Bossy and Clark Gillies this year in such proximity at such a relatively young age is tragic. And I'm playing the tapes for my son. who's now 22, and I happened on a Mike Bossy interview, so I put it in, and he's like, Steve, I love your show, but you got to get more hockey in it. I love listening to it, and I'm like, I don't even remember that. I don't even remember that interview, and it's thrilling me as I'm listening to it. It just warms my heart. So yeah, but the pencil does work. Yes, I
But Ray,
I think some of our audience won't even know what a cassette is, though.
Well, I
Yeah, I
should
know.
put one down here. Yeah.
or a pencil, Robbie, or a pencil.
Right, or a pencil. Very good.
Boy, that's true, isn't it? Yeah.
So Ray, shouldn't this guy write a book?
Yes.
I've mentioned that to him a few times. So
Yes,
we'll
so
see.
I would like to write a book. I mean, there's so many avenues I could take, and there's so many avenues. One avenue I don't even want to talk about. I will confide in Ray next time we talk. I'm not trying to be mysterious, or it's nothing nefarious at all. But that makes that I accomplish everything I've accomplished even more amazing to me, and shows that God has always been looking out for me, always. But yeah, I'd love to write a book, with the right person, and I'm sure, through shows like yours and others, even if the mainstream media wouldn't put me on to talk about it, I'm sure I could get people who lived through what we lived through interested in it.
Well, you always have a home here, Steve. Thank you so very much for joining us today, and God bless you, man. You really connected with so many people for so many decades, and I was one of your biggest fans.
Hey, he's friends with Randy Levine, so I got to be cool with him.
Okay, there we go.
No, hey, listen, seriously. When you say that to me, that you were my biggest fan, or Ray tells me that warms my heart. That makes me feel so good. You don't have to thank me. I thank you and Ray and Robbie. I don't know you all that well. I'd love to talk to you off the show. Yeah. But Ray, you know how I feel about you and how I love you. And thanks, guys. I'll come back anytime.
Thank you, brother.
All right, Steve. God bless the great Steve Malzberg. He's looking for a gig out there, guys. Let's hook him up there. Robbie, great guy, right?
Oh man, absolutely. And what a great life, what a great story. And you're right, he's got to write a book. But speaking about writing a book, our next guest has a book that he wrote not too long ago, and it's one of the most amazing books I've ever read. There it is. It's called You Keep Me Hanging On. The raging story of rock and roll music's golden age. Now, this next guest, let me give him an introduction. I have two big heroes. Everybody who knows me knows that I play Hammond organ, and you can see behind me there's a couple Hammond organs here. I own 13 Hammond organs.
Wow.
But I have two musical heroes in my life and Hammond organ for the rock idiom. One is Felix Cavalieri from the Rascals, and the other is Mark Stein from the band Vanilla Fudge. Wow. And our guest, I am thrilled. I am honored to have one of my absolute heroes. It's like having on the show Sandy Koufax, or having on the show Babe Ruth. This guy is one of the greatest ever. His name is Mark Stein, and welcome to our show, Mark.
Mark.
Oh, wow. How do I follow an introduction like that, Robbie?
Well, it's amazing. Sincere, and it's well-deserved, brother.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. I've been listening to all you wonderful Yankee people. Been a Yankee fan all my life, and it's really great to be here. I appreciate the invite. Definitely.
Thank you for being here today. And hey, listen, as Robbie knows, I'm out of space when it comes to all you great musicians, because I think it's truly the greatest art. And what you and Robbie and Frankie and all these guys do is incredible. So thank you so much for being here today.
Well, it's my pleasure, believe me.
And you are a big-time Yankee fan, and so I'll have to, even you are my hero, so I have to let that go. But so many of you New York musicians, love the Yankees. And tell us, that book that you wrote a couple of years ago, tell the people what motivated you to write a book. What a story you guys had.
Yeah, well, I've been in the business all my life since I'm, an adolescent, probably 60 years now. It's amazing. Mm-hmm. But, I always was talking about writing a book. Patty, my wife, said you should write a book. My friends and fans, yeah, I'm going to do it. I'd write a few pages, and then I'd get a block. And So one day I went to my mailroom and I got this big book that was in the mail called The Patriot's History of the United States by Professor Larry Schweikart. I said, what is this? I opened up the inside sleeve and it says, to Mark, I've been a big fan of yours, Vanilla Fudge, all my life. God bless you. All of this. And it was like, wow, man, this cat's like a professor of history at the University of Dayton. I Googled him. I found out about his history. I said, wow, I wonder if he'd be interested in collaborating with me and, on a book. So I sent him an email and he got excited and he said yes. And we went back and forth and he told me to write a synopsis, so I locked myself up and hand wrote, for 2 weeks, an overview of how I wanted, my history and the relationship Vanilla Fudge and classic rock to be. I sent it to him. He really liked it. And we just took it from there. And he just started putting this thing to it. And, the cool part about the book is all the great interviews with people like Billy Joel and Robbie Krieger from The Doors and Phil Bernstein, the cat that brought the Beatles to America and managed the Rascals in their prime years,
Right.
And there's so many great interviews with so many wonderful people. And it's just a relationship of Vanilla Fudge against the Vietnam War, against, the peace movement. And we were really at the center of the pop music universe in the late 60s. And how everything, just evolved into the 70s, into metal, into heavy rock, into the...
By the way, speaking of when you guys first started there, one of your opening acts was pretty good. Tell the audience who your opening act was for a long time.
Oh, you must be talking about a band called Led Zeppelin, right?
Yeah.
Who are they?
Well, you have to understand, everybody starts out somewhere, and
right.
The Fudge were really, we were like the number one vocal group in the United States in 1968, voted by Record World. We had like 3 albums in the top 50 at the same time, which is pretty amazing.
Oh, and what a band. One of the best bands ever. And they still rock too, by the way.
Yeah, we're still rocking. I just got off the road and we got some dates booked coming up, but we'll talk about that later. But anyway, Jimmy Page, was in the Yardbirds, legendary band. He left the Yardbirds and came to America with John Bonham and John Paul Jones and Robert Plant, who at the time were unknowns. And they signed with Atlantic Atco Records, and we became label mates. And they needed to, go on the road. And they asked if they could open for us. So it was out in Denver back in '68 in December that they were the opening act. And at the time, the promoter said, we have enough bands on this. If you want this new band Led Zeppelin, you're going to have to pay them, not me. So we actually paid them about $600.
Wow.
We foot the bill so they could have expenses, just so they could start getting exposure. I mean, it was pretty amazing. And in the beginning, they were really rough around the edges, but we hung out a lot, and they used to watch our show, and I know we inspired them with our live show and the symphonic rock arrangement approaches we had. But I saw them evolve into the biggest rock band of all time, really, and that was pretty amazing. It was pretty incredible. I remember the second.
No, I wanted to ask you. I always meant to ask you this question, which is, the name of the book is "You Keep Me Hanging On." Okay, now when Diana Ross and the Supremes did that song, the contrast of the two songs, was that intimidating to you, or was it like, oh, we're gonna destroy this? How did you think? How did you go about that?
Well, I can remember I was sitting in front of the Cheetah discotheque in 1966 in New York City in the winter. Me and the late great Tim Bogert, who was the original bass player, and at the time, our stick was taking other people's songs and breaking them down and building them up, completely rewriting, the arrangements and the musical approach, but maintaining the integrity of the lyrics. But that was our thing. We just had this, innovative concept to music at that time. So when Keep Me Hanging On came over the radio, it just sounded so fast, and the lyrics were hurting, but it was in a major key, and it was a great record, but it was real happy. And Tim said to me, "Man, what it would be like if we slowed this song down and just put like a really heavy arrangement behind it?" And I said, "Man, I looked at him and I said, you might be right. This might be a really cool thing to do." He said, "We'll go to work on it." So I just came up with these approaches to the introduction. And Vinnie Martell, the great original guitarist for our band, had this awesome, solo introduction, this rock raga thing that he did. We were playing at a club called Longano's on the West Side, which was another discotheque in New York City back then. And the two of us got together and we started working on the arrangement. Carmine Appice and Tim Bogert, they met us and they listened to it and they started coming up with their rhythm section ideas, and all the vocals started coming together. I mean, after a few hours, we knew we had something like really special.
Wow.
And we just couldn't wait to unleash it on the world. And we started playing it at the club and everybody stopped dancing and they just came to the stage and we just like watched. And that was what was incredible. So it started like a whole thing of symphonic psychedelic rock. That was the beginning of, that whole era right then and there.
That's
I could go on and on for hours, but yeah.
Mark, I had a question for you. Lyrically, you brought up the Vietnam War, you brought up the peace movement. Did your lyrics back then kind of symbolize what was going on there? Because our show is kind of like a little history lesson. I'm curious to know, did that really inspire you in some of the great music that you put out then?
Well, you know what? We do a song called People Get Ready, okay? It was written by Curtis Mayfield from the Impressions, and it reflected the civil rights movement, People get ready to train to Jordan, you don't need no ticket, you just get on board. It's a real emotional, spiritual song. And we took the song and we came up with this real nice, all gospel arrangement of it, which was very popular on our first album. And, I'm glad you brought that up because now when we're playing it live, I dedicate it to the courageous and brave people of Ukraine. Because when you look at the news, all the trains of all the refugees that are going to Yugoslavia, Romania, and mostly Poland, the folks don't need a ticket. They just get on board. And I said, man,
wow.
The lyrics, we're going to re-record it live and we're going to dedicate it to, the Ukrainian refugees. So,
oh, fantastic. And
actually my song, Let's Pray for Peace right now, the video that you're probably going to play at the end of the show, is also there's going to be a link at the end of the video where anybody can donate to UNICEF, where all the money's going to go to Ukrainian children and their families. So,
and we are going to play that at the end of the show. And that song is so great. And your record, it's like went to #1 in Pittsburgh, right?
Yeah, There's a Light, my latest solo album. I know, isn't it amazing?
That's fantastic, man.
It's based on airplay and requests. So it went to top 10, and the disc jockey was excited, and I was doing the Flower Power cruise in the Caribbean at the time. When I got back about 10 days later, about a week later, he was all excited, and he sent me an email. He says, "Dude, how's this to start your week off? You're #1 right now. John Lodge from Moody Blues is #2." And they had 8 bands in the top 10 who are young that I obviously never really heard of. But it was pretty cool. And then it kind of fell off the charts. And then he emailed me again last week and he said, "It's unbelievable. You came back on. You're back in the top 10, which means there's affiliate stations that are playing your record. And they're playing songs like Racism and All Lives Matter and your song, Let's Pray for Peace." So whatever's going on, it's very difficult for classic rock cats to get airplay.
Right.
The whole business is way different today than it was back then because it's all streaming and it's hard to really get on, modern radio, obviously. But I'm really happy that I'm getting the exposure and getting some legs on it. So, and we're working on some TV stuff as we speak. I'm hoping to get on some TV,
Nice.
Fox or some specials that are in the works right now with the song and the video. So who knows, guys? Never quit. Just keep moving forward, right?
Hey, that's what
Never
you keep
quit.
doing, man. You were born to do that, brother, and that's what you're going to do the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Like that other little Italian I know,
I got a text over here from Louis Guzman, the great actor who watches the show religiously, and he says,
Cool.
"What did Diana Ross have to say about the song?" Meaning,
Oh, that's a good question.
You know.
Well, she never had much to say about it, but Mary Wilson did, one of the other Supremes.
Huh?
I happened to run into her at the American Music Awards, like back in the 80s. And I went up to her and we started talking, and she was talking about how she was blown away with what we did with the song. You know, it was like, you guys, how did you come up with, with that kind of approach to the song? And, I think it was Lamont Dozier, Holland Dozier and Holland wrote the song, along with so many great Motown hits. And if you Google it, you'll see that they thought that our arrangement was their favorite, by far their favorite version.
Well, you nailed it when you said you listened to the lyric, but the record by the Supremes was a great record, but it didn't match. The music did not really match the lyric. Just Neil Sedaka did that. What was his "Break It Up Is Hard to Do"? Remember?
Yeah.
Neil Sedaka had a song "Down Doobie Doo Down Down." Break it up is hard to do,
And
which doesn't match the lyrics. Then he came back later and he put the music to match the lyrics, and it was much more. It's a much deeper approach to it. And you did that same thing in some ways with that song.
Well, what we did was in a major key, and I put it into a minor key.
Right.
And I started singing it. It just felt so much more serious and dramatic singing it in a minor key and slowing it down.
Absolutely.
So it was like a whole new song, man, and hey.
Now, Frank, Robbie, didn't Frankie Valli do a little bit of that with one of Sinatra's songs?
Well, Frankie did "Under My Skin," and he took and they had actually a chart record with it, "Under My Skin," but they totally they did a total transformation on the way the approach to that song. That was Bob Gaudio's idea.
It was a beautiful song. They did a wonderful job. I thought Frankie was courageous in trying something like that.
Hey, I just spilled something. You guys take me off the show a minute. Keep talking, brother.
All right.
Yeah. Okay.
But Mark, the book has been out for a little bit of time. How can people get a hold of the book so people know?
Well, yeah, you can get the book. You can go to my website, mark-stein.com, and you can get a signed, autographed, and numbered copy. Or if you prefer, you could always order it on Amazon. So those are the two ways to get it.
Has there ever been any talk about a movie with that book, Mark?
Well, that's interesting you brought that up, because I ran into, oh my God, my mind's blank. I ran into Kathy Moriarty, who played with Robert De Niro in Raging Bull.
Right.
I ran into her a number of years ago, right after the book was out, and I gave her a copy of the book, and I said this would be a great. I think this would be a great. I was trying to pitch it for her, because she could play Patty. My wife was my manager most of my life. I said, you'd be great as Patty Stein.
Wow.
I said, well, give me the book. I'll send it to, the famous director, Marty,
Scorsese.
So that was about as far as it got. Mm-hmm. But I think there hasn't been a movie that really reflected like an epic movie, the way there's epic movies about so many things. What about the record business? Well, at one time, I think Francis Ford Coppola was involved in the script, and it was a movie. It was going to be called Number One with a Bullet. And it was a great title for a movie because back in the late 60s, the lion's share of the music industry was ruled by the mob. So it was, it was a perfect kind of ideology behind something like that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I just think that movie one day will happen. I only hope they'll use my book as a basis for it.
Yeah,
that would be great. Hey, by the way, of course, you're wearing your Yankee pinstripes. We were talking before the show a little bit about one of the World Series games that you were at. One of my favorite games, by the way. You want to share with our audience and with Ray and Steve about you being at that World Series game?
It was the World Series where Bob Welch struck out, the famous strikeout with Reggie Jackson.
Right.
I had a feeling it had something to do with the Dodgers.
Say what?
I had a feeling it had something to do with the Dodgers.
It's something to do with the Dodgers. Well, I was living in LA then, so I mean, I loved the Dodgers too. I lived there for 20 years.
Okay.
And that's where I met Mark, because Mark's wife, Patty, who he just referenced, he just talked about, who is a great lady, a great lady.
Thank you.
But she was the secretary, right-hand woman for Frankie Valli's manager.
Oh,
Brian Abnett.
Brian, thank you. Yeah.
Brian Abnett.
wow.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable.
And there's an
Wow.
interesting story. We have time about the time that she set up a meeting between Phil Spector at the time and Brian Abnett, and they were trying to set up a situation where Phil would produce Frankie Valli. So Phil called me up one night, asked for Patty. I said, "This is my husband Mark," and I said, "Oh well."
By the way, let me stop you just for a second, because I want to give a frame of reference to the audience, because not everybody in the audience may know this, but Phil Spector was a legendary producer, one of the great all-time producer, but he was also a legendary crazy man who ended up going to prison for killing his wife. So go ahead and tell them.
And actually, this was the night that I experienced what was to come. Okay. Sorry to say, but it's the truth. So he invited us all to his house, in Pasadena. It was myself and Patty and Brian Abnett and one of the writers. I think it was, I can't believe I remember this, but it was one of the music writer from the Sacramento Bee. Wow. Okay, the newspaper. So they were supposed to put together a situation where Phil was going to, produce Frankie Valli, and actually, the whole night was spent in the middle of Phil's madness. He was just serving drinks. He had John Lennon's guitar, on a stand. He was telling me about the night that John slept at his house and woke up and wrote Imagine in his house by his piano, And we just spoke, and it just went on and on. We never quite got to the subject matter, which was the reason we went to his house in the first place. And all of a sudden, he disappeared, and we couldn't find him. And hours went by, and everybody was getting more and more angry.
Wow.
And before you know it, to make a long story short, it was daylight. It was first light. And Brian said, I got a tee off at 9:00 this morning. I got to get out of here, And Brian was one of the hottest managers. He was managing Frankie. He was managing the Manhattan Transfer at the time, and just a whole bunch of great artists. So we get in our cars, and we start driving down the dirt path, and the iron gates start to close. And his bodyguards had released the dogs, and we were stuck and caught inside Phil Spector's mansion. We go running back into the house, and Brian is screaming. I'm screaming. I was so pissed off at Phil, And before you know it, he was wielding a gun, And everybody was like really freaking out and getting nervous. There's no need for this. What's going on? We came here.
Amazing.
That's a movie. It's a movie.
I mean, it's incredible, man. And then finally, we got back in our cars, and they opened up the gates and they let us out. And when Frankie heard about this, forget about it. There's no way he wanted nothing to do. You could see Frankie Valli here in this.
Oh, can you imagine? Well,
Patty.
And that story and so many other great stories are in your book, and so I encourage people to get that book. To get your book, how do people get that book, Mark? Is it on Amazon?
Yeah, I just mentioned to the guys it's Amazon, or you can go to mark-stein.com and get a signed and numbered copy. So
okay,
real quick, Mark, we're almost out of time, guys. We're almost out of time. We want to show that video. You said you're out gigging now. You're performing. Where are you going to be at?
Well, we just came back. We just played Jersey, some theaters in Pennsylvania. We got a little time off now, but we got a bunch of shows in. It's not going to be till July in the summer. We're going to be in the Chicago area, and Illinois, and the Midwest, and they're working on new shows for late summer and the fall.
Awesome.
And
go see him. Vanilla Fudge rock. You guys,
great. But before we see your video, which is amazing, it's healing for everybody around the world, especially for the people of the Ukraine. Jam and Java tonight, Robbie. What's going on there?
Oh, tonight I'm just off the road, and we're going to tell some road stories. We're going to tell a lot of lies tonight.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, gentlemen. We're going to take this home, Mark. with your
All right,
great
guys.
song there. God bless
I'm sure
you,
we'll
sir.
see you again, man. All the best.
Awesome.
Stay well,
God
guys.
Robbie.
All right.
What a world we live in. A lot of pleasure, a lot of sin. Many languages spoken. Promises and borders broken. Who'd like to share a little silent prayer? Let's pray for peace tonight. Handed down through the ages, written on ancient pages, little melodies of pain and sorrow, words of God that we can borrow. Who'd like to share a little silent prayer? Let's pray for peace tonight. Evil's afflicted, the masses are addicted. Lord, won't you come now and clear this confusion? Come all you faithful fighters of great fires, soldiers of fortune, and all great men of science, world leaders, sons and daughters, philosophers, millers, porters, all nations, just one time, joined in rhythm and rhyme. Who'd like to share a little silent prayer? Let's pray for peace. Let's pray for peace. Let's pray for peace tonight.